In 2005, MySpace was one of the biggest social networks on the planet. More traffic than Google, more cultural influence than pretty much any other brand. And in 5 years, it was gone. But here's the part that nobody really talks about. MySpace wasn't beat by Facebook. They were beat by themselves, and more specifically, decisions they made along the way that I think you and I can learn about. And also, that's where ChatGPT comes into play, because I think they might be on the precipice of making similar bad decisions. I'm Scott Monday, and this is my series called Whatever Happened To. You see, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm morbidly curious about what makes businesses succeed and fail, especially the ones that you and I grew up with. I had a MySpace. I used it mainly for music and a little bit of connecting with other people, but I was never really like a power user. I was never really like, in that debate of who's in your top 8 and things like that. But I knew people that definitely were into MySpace heavily, and for an entire generation, it was really kind of one of the first spots we went to create a digital footprint, right? But then Facebook showed up, and I remember diving deeply into that. I reconnected with people from high school and really started using that quite a bit, and MySpace kind of faded into the background. But what you and I may not know or remember from when we were growing up is it wasn't that Facebook killed MySpace, it was that MySpace killed MySpace. And it was really due to some poor decisions made by people that really should have known better at the top. But first, a little bit of background. MySpace launched in Los Angeles in 2003, and it was created by 2 guys, Tom Anderson and Chris DeWolf. Yeah, that same Tom Anderson that was everybody's first MySpace friend, right? And what they built was genuinely remarkable at the time. You could add customized music, you could create the imagery, you could of course gather up a community of different friends, you could discover new brands. It was really one of the first spots that literally was our space online. And by 2004, we weren't alone because it started to grow massively, specifically when it came to musicians growing a fan base and popular brands growing their online collateral. And by 2004, it was growing faster than anybody would have realized. People were building brands online, bands were getting recognized, teenagers were building their identity. It was a real cultural phenomenon. And by 2005, MySpace had 25 million users, if you could believe it, and it had more website traffic on some days than Google itself. And that's when a guy named Rupert Murdoch showed up. Rupert Murdoch, he's the Fox News guy, and his company News Corp purchased MySpace for $580 million in 2005. It made sense at the time. A massive media company buys an upstart digital entity, and so now MySpace had a ton of resources. They had investment, they had staff, they had the ability to truly scale. And for a minute, it really worked. By 2006, MySpace had 100 million users. Bands were getting famous on MySpace, teenagers were using it. It was really a spot to go to, and it had a gravitational pull for an entire generation. But here's where the story gets interesting. You see, News Corp is a media company, right? And what do media companies do? They know how to deploy advertisement. So when News Corp looked at the 100 million MySpace users, they saw one thing: inventory, specifically eyeball inventory. So in 2006, News Corp signs a deal with Google, and it was a 3-year deal worth $900 million. And what Google got was the opportunity to become the primary ad platform for MySpace. And what News Corp got was $900 million over the course of 3 years. $900 million, it sounded like a windfall, right? Well, it was actually a trap. This deal not only brought in advertising revenue, but it brought in contractual obligations. There had to be a certain amount of advertisement shown at a certain cadence to fulfill the contract. So what happened? Well, MySpace's engineers had to make some really terrible decisions. They had to do things like increase the spam. What did that do? That increased the load times. Advertisement just became all over the place, and it really decreased the user experience. In summary, everything that made MySpace special in the beginning was eroded because of this advertising deal. It just wasn't the same place anymore, and the customers realized that. Meanwhile, here's what was happening on the other side of the country. A guy named Mark Zuckerberg was building this platform called Facebook, and it was really taking off as well. In fact, it was taking off so well that Yahoo offered Zuckerberg $1 billion to purchase Facebook in 2006, and he turned it down. At the time, he wasn't interested in cashing in. He was interested in building a great user experience. And quite frankly, Facebook was better. It was cleaner, It was faster. It adhered to a real name policy that really increased the amount that you could trust that the people you were talking to were the people you wanted to be talking to. While MySpace was trying to figure out how to monetize, Facebook was shipping new features. They were just getting better every day, and MySpace was getting worse. By 2009, MySpace had 1,600 employees, and Facebook had a fraction of that. And eventually, users noticed. First, the early adopters started to leave MySpace to go to Facebook, and then the rest of us did. And MySpace looked up and realized that those ads were being served to an increasingly smaller customer base.
It seems like only yesterday, MySpace was the hot destination for social media users. But along came Facebook and Twitter, and MySpace fell out of favor. That's led News Corp to sell off the struggling site for $35 million.
And while the ad income from Google definitely made up for that fall in value, MySpace in essence was dead. A generational platform gone in 5 years. You see, MySpace had optimized for the contract, not the customer. And when the customer leaves, they rarely, if ever, come back. So what does all this have to do with ChatGPT? I think we're watching the same movie again. ChatGPT launched in 2002, and people loved it. They loved it because you simply opened it up, you put in a prompt, and it gave you great results. It was clean. It was actually spooky clean, right? Just a text box sitting right there. But you go in there, and for the first time, all of us were realizing that we can put a prompt in, and the results that it gives us is almost like a really, really smart human telling us something. It was novel. It was almost like how we felt when we first opened up MySpace and realized we could design our own digital platform, right? And that whole clean, fast, accurate output was what caused ChatGPT to grow to 100 million users faster than any platform in the history of the internet. People started building workflows around it. Businesses started relying on it. It just worked. But now, OpenAI is exploring ads. I want to be careful here because we're still in early days when it comes to ChatGPT and ads, but it seems to be a similar pattern. Something that works really well, that we trust, that's super clean and simple, might potentially become convoluted because of advertising needs and revenue. And here's how I look at it. It's really difficult for a platform, especially one that is based solely on providing you with accurate information, not to feel like it might be swayed in terms of the responses it gives because it's getting money from advertisers. And I think that sounds kind of familiar. And you know what? ChatGPT doesn't think the users are going to walk away, and neither did MySpace. But they did, in droves. They lost 100 million of them virtually overnight. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen to ChatGPT per se, but at the end of the day, when a company starts choosing ad revenue over the customer experience, there tends to always be the same result. So what does all this have to do with you and I as business owners? It's not like we're getting tantalized with $900 million Google offers on a daily basis, right? But we do make small decisions every day that affect our bottom line and affect our customers' experience. So here's what the danger can look like. You build something that customers love. You build something that works really well. When you start out, you're really focused on how the customer feels. But then along the way, you have opportunities to do things that increase revenue just a little bit. Maybe something that you used to do that helped you grow becomes a little bit too expensive, so you drop it. Maybe some tactics and strategies that you might use to increase your proposal conversion rate or things like that that just don't feel right. Well, you roll them out to affect the numbers. And slowly, day by day, you make these decisions that once again hurt the customer experience, but increase the net profit. Well, here's the slippery slope. One day you can look up just like MySpace did, and the customer isn't there. It doesn't matter if you're maximizing net profit or increasing revenue. If the customer leaves because your product erodes, you're done. So all of this is part of what I call mediocre thinking. It's really short-sighted. We can't make decisions along the way for the temporary good that affect the long-term health of the company, specifically when it comes to the way customers experience our brands. MySpace wasn't ran by idiots. News Corp wasn't ran by idiots. They were ran by really smart people that made really bad decisions along the way. So here's what we have to do. We can't make the same mistakes that they made. We can't put profit in front of customer experience. We can't stop doing the small but important things that got us to where we are just because there's money on the table. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Is there a toxic deal that you've already made inside your business? Maybe not with Google, maybe not for $900 million, But is there something that you've decided to do of late that is eroding your customer experience? Think about that. MySpace had every advantage. They had money, they had employees, they had the backing of a massive news corporation, but they stopped doing the thing that matters, caring for their customers. If you found this story useful, I'd love for you to subscribe. I do videos like this every few weeks. No fluff, no motivational talk, just real lessons from real businesses that you and I remember from when we were growing up. And I really want to know what you think. Do you think ChatGPT is making the same mistake that MySpace did? Drop your take in the comments below. I'll make sure to read and respond to every single one of them. I'm Scott Monday, and I'll see you next time.